Newport Interstate 40 sniper shots. On the evening of June 25, 2003, on Interstate 40, roughly 40 miles east of Knoxville, Tennessee, traffic moved through a long, wooded corridor near mile marker 437. Aaron Hamill was 45 years old, a registered nurse from Knoxville driving home in his pickup truck on a route he had driven hundreds of times before. The cab of his pickup carried groceries and the quiet end of an ordinary shift. He was alone in his lane, holding a steady speed eastbound. Then, a small caliber round punched through the windshield and struck him in the head. The wheel jerked under his hand. The truck began drifting across lanes. It crossed the median, hit a guardrail, and slid roughly 50 feet before stopping in the grass. In a separate lane, a second .22 caliber round struck Kimberly Bede, 19 years old, driving home to Moneta, Virginia. 8 bullet fragments lodged inside her body. Aaron Hamill was pronounced dead at the scene from the gunshot wound to the head. Bede survived, but would carry fragments inside her for years. Tennessee Highway Patrol and Cocke County investigators worked the wooded shoulder and found shell casings in the brush north of the highway. Within 2 days, they had identified 2 suspects, stepbrothers from nearby Newport. William Buckner was 15. Joshua Buckner was 13. In interrogation rooms days later, the brothers told investigators they had taken 2 .22 caliber rifles from their home about a week before the shooting and hidden them in the woods near the interstate. They said they had wanted to shoot at the beds of tractor-trailer trucks as they passed, copying what they had done playing Grand Theft Auto 3. They told the officers they had been bored. Prosecutors identified William Buckner as the likely shooter on both rounds. Both boys pleaded guilty in Cocke County Juvenile Court to reckless homicide, reckless endangerment, and aggravated assault. Judge Ben Strand committed them to the Tennessee Department of Children's Services for an indefinite period, eligible for release no earlier than age 19. On October 20th, 2003, the Hamill and Bede families filed a $246 million civil suit against Rockstar Games, Take-Two Interactive, Sony Computer Entertainment America, and Walmart, the first major American lawsuit to argue a Grand Theft Auto title had trained children to kill. Bangkok Soi Jaran Sanitwong cab. In early August 2008, in the dense, humid streets of central Bangkok, a taxi pulled to a stop on Soi Jaran Sanitwong. The driver was 54 years old, a working Bangkok cabbie in the back half of his shift. His passenger was Polwat Chino, 19, a Bangkok teenager who had told relatives he was hooked on Grand Theft Auto 4. When it came time to pay the fare, Polwat pulled a knife and demanded the driver hand over the cab and his money. The driver reached for a metal bar he kept by the seat to defend himself. Polwat stabbed him repeatedly. The driver was killed in his own taxi. With the driver's body still in the back seat, Polwat tried to drive the cab away. He didn't know how. He pressed the horn over and over while reversing into a dead-end alley. Neighbors on Soi Jaran Sanitwong heard the noise, looked out, saw the cab and the body, and called police, who arrived within minutes and arrested him at the wheel. In custody, Polwat told Bangkok Metropolitan Police he had wanted to see whether the carjacking he had been doing for hours inside Grand Theft Auto 4 would be fun in real life, and that he had needed money to keep paying for game time at the cafe where he played. He was charged with robbery causing death and possession of an offensive weapon, and police told reporters he could face the death penalty under Thai law if convicted. Within days, the Thai Ministry of Culture ordered every copy of Grand Theft Auto 4 pulled from Thai shelves, the first nationwide ban of a Grand Theft Auto title triggered by a single killing. Slaughter, Louisiana living room shot. On August 22, 2013, in a mobile home park called Country Breeze on Louisiana Highway 67, near the small community of Slaughter in East Feliciana Parish, a television was running in a living room. Marie Smothers was 87 years old, the caregiver of her 8-year-old grandson while his parents were in school. She and the boy shared the same bedroom in the trailer. Around 5 in the afternoon, the boy stopped playing Grand Theft Auto 4 on the television. Inside the trailer, his grandmother's .38 caliber handgun sat in easy reach. He picked up the handgun and walked behind her chair while she watched television. He fired once into the back of her head. East Feliciana Parish Sheriff's deputies arrived and found Marie Smothers dead from a single gunshot wound to the head. The boy first told investigators the shooting had been accidental. Under further questioning, the East Feliciana Parish Sheriff's Office concluded it had been intentional, and deputies announced publicly that he had been playing Grand Theft Auto 4 minutes before the shooting, and that the game, in their stated view, awarded points to players for killing people. In the days that followed, mental health and gaming research experts pushed back on the sheriff's framing, noting that cognitive development, environmental factors, and access to a loaded handgun all carry more weight than game content in shooting deaths involving very young children. Under Louisiana state law, no child under 10 can be charged with a crime. A Louisiana family court judge ruled the 8-year-old could continue living at home with counseling. No criminal case was ever filed. The case became the most cited recent example in the American debate over violent video games and very young children, in part because the sheriff's own press release directly named Grand Theft Auto 4 as a factor in a homicide investigation. Moscow, a 108 Roadside. On the night of August 18, 2014, on the A108 motorway looping outside Moscow, scattered homemade caltrops, sharpened spikes welded together to puncture tires, sat across the road in the dark. Albert Yusupov was 31 years old, a former dancer driving outside Moscow that night. He was on the motorway alone, his headlights cutting the empty country darkness. One of his tires burst over a caltrop. He pulled to the shoulder, switched on his hazards, and called a friend on his phone to say he had a flat. Figures emerged from the roadside. He was shot beside the disabled car, his body left lying next to the open door. He became the 10th confirmed killing tied to the group that Russian media had begun calling the Grand Theft Auto Gang, named for the way they hunted motorists the way characters in the game hunt drivers in traffic. Hours later, his friend, alarmed when he never arrived, alerted authorities. Russian highway patrol officers found Yusupov's body next to the disabled car on the A108. In the weeks that followed, Russian investigators linked the killing to a string of 17 murders along Moscow region highways, stretching back to 2012. All using the same caltrop and ambush method. They identified the founder as Ibaydulo Subkhanov, a Kyrgyz national operating under the alias Rustam Uzmanov, who had set up a self-proclaimed Jamaat in the village of Udelnaya outside Moscow to train fighters for the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. On November 6, 2014, Russian Federal Security Service officers raided Udelnaya. Subkhanov was killed in the firefight. The surviving members were taken into custody. 3 years later, 3 of the defendants tried to overpower their guards in an elevator at the Moscow Regional Court during a hearing, and were shot dead by bailiff. 2 more defendants were wounded, and a National Guard officer was hit in the shoulder. The remaining defendants stood trial in Moscow Oblast the following year. On August 9, 2018, a Russian court sentenced 4 members of the gang to life in prison. A 5th received 20 years. The gang was held responsible for 17 confirmed murders and 2 serious injuries across the Moscow and Kaluga regions between 2012 and 2014. The Russian press kept the nickname all the way to verdict. 5 men were sent to prison under a headline that read, "GTA Gang Sentence," after a series of killings the gang's own founder had framed as ideological recruitment, but the country had read as a video game come to life. Fayette, Alabama Police Station booking room. In the early morning hours of June 7, 2003, in the small West Alabama town of Fayette, the police station was the kind of quiet a department like Fayette is for most of the night. A patrol unit had pulled over a vehicle in the county a short time before for driving a stolen car, and the driver was being walked in to be booked. Sergeant Arnold Strickland was 55 years old, on duty at the front desk. Officer James Crump was the second officer on shift. Dispatcher Leslie Ace Mealer was working the radio. The man being walked in for booking was Devin Darnell Thompson, 18 years old, going by the name Devin Moore. During the booking process, Moore grabbed Sergeant Strickland's .40 caliber service pistol. He shot Strickland twice. He turned and shot Officer Crump 3 times. He walked through the station and shot Dispatcher Mealer. Officers responding to the scene found 3 men dead from gunshot wounds inside the Fayette police station. Moore fled in a stolen Fayette police cruiser. He was captured roughly 3.5 hours later in Mississippi. When officers caught him, Moore looked at them and said the line that would come to define the case. "Life is a video game. Everybody's gotta die sometime." During a roughly 2-hour interrogation later that day, Moore signed a confession in front of Alabama Bureau of Investigation agent Johnny Tubbs. He said Sergeant Strickland had been nasty to him and that he didn't want to go back to jail. He didn't mention video game. 2 years later, defense attorney Jim Standridge argued in pretrial motions that Moore's marathon Grand Theft Auto 3 and Grand Theft Auto Vice City sessions had triggered a dissociative episode in a mind already fractured by childhood abuse. When the case went to trial in 2005, Fayette County Circuit Judge James Moore ruled the defense's expert testimony on video games inadmissible. Jurors never heard it. The hearing became the first time in the United States a grand theft auto title had been formally proposed in court as a contributing cause of murder. In August 2005, the jury deliberated for just over an hour before convicting Devin Moore on 3 counts of capital murder. On October 9, 2005, he was sentenced to death by lethal injection. That same month, the families of Strickland, Crump, and Mealer filed Strickland versus Sony, a civil suit against Sony Computer Entertainment America, Take-Two Interactive, and Rockstar Games, arguing the game had trained Moore to kill. The families later settled the litigation, and no court ever ruled whether a Grand Theft Auto title could share legal responsibility for 3 police deaths. Sierra Blanca Ranch triple shooting. On July 5, 2004, on a ranch in southeastern New Mexico owned by ABC newsman Sam Donaldson, near the small town of Hondo, Don was breaking over a manure pile by the equipment shed. The ranch ran a small herd and a handful of working buildings, quiet at that hour, except for the cattle. Paul Posey was 34 years old, the working foreman of the ranch. His wife, Tryon, was 44. Their 14-year-old Cody lived with them in the foreman's house. In the early morning, Cody fatally shot his father, his stepmother, and his stepsister on the property. He used a backhoe to bury all 3 bodies inside the manure pile beside the shed. Ranch hands discovered the bodies the following day, and the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office located Cody and took him into custody. At trial the following year, the defense argued that years of physical and psychological abuse from his father had triggered the killing, and Cody testified to that effect from the stand. 2 years later, on September 25, 2006, attorney Jack Thompson filed a wrongful death lawsuit on behalf of the surviving Posey relatives, naming Sony, Take-Two, and Rockstar Games. The complaint alleged Cody had played Grand Theft Auto Vice City obsessively in the months before the killing, that a Sony PlayStation 2 and a copy of Vice City had been recovered at the ranch, and that the game had trained him to kill. In February 2006, Cody Posey had been convicted of voluntary manslaughter for his father's death, second-degree murder for his stepmother's death, and first-degree murder for his stepsister's death. On December 19, 2007, a New Mexico judge dismissed Thompson's lawsuit on jurisdictional grounds. Cody Posey was released from custody in 2010, having earned a high school diploma and college credits while serving as a youth mentor. If you appreciate documentation like this, consider subscribing, and tell me what to cover next in the comments.